Hello, welcome back. Still Harry Potter Friday. I had to change because I spilled something all over my sweatshirt and it was white, so I just look like a mess. So sorry about that. Next Friday, I will wear something maybe darker so that if I spill on it, it's not a problem. I wanted to show you a couple of my pop things up close so you could see them because before maybe you didn't get to see them so close. So this is Fox. Cute, right? And then Harry. And who's he holding? Hedwig. This is one of my favorites. Professor McGonagall. And Voldemort. Cool, right? I haven't, when I looked on Seesaw earlier, nobody had left me a video yet. So I'm not sure what's happening with that. I'm hoping that later on today when I go to look that there will be some videos for me because I'm looking forward to seeing some of you. And I want to hear what you're doing. I want to hear what you're doing at home with your time and I don't know, just what's going on. I feel out of touch with you and I would like for you guys to let me know what's happening in your lives. Okay, so we're here to read from Titanic. Yesterday, where we left off, was called Chapter 6, Warnings. So that's where we are. While the passengers were enjoying themselves, J. Bruce Ismay paid close attention to the clock. The trip was supposed to take 8 days, but he wanted the Titanic to get to New York sooner. An early arrival in New York would be great publicity for the White Star Line. I want to show you this page. There's a picture, and it's got another map, and it's got labels. And then I want to show you within another nonfiction text feature, italics. See it in there? The name of the Titanic is in italics, which we know means that we should pay close attention, right? Okay. And then there's this inset. It's an inset, and it's kind of like an additional information that helps us understand the story. So it says, how did the Titanic communicate with other ships? Before the telegraph was invented, ships had to rely on flags or light signals from nearby ships to warn of dangers ahead. In 1901, Italian engineer, I'm going to try and say this name, but I don't know how, Guglielmo Marconi, invented the wireless radio telegraph. The telegraph used radio waves to send messages through the air. The Titanic's operators used Morse code, a system of dots and dashes, to communicate messages. These messages were sent to and from other ships or to stations on land. And it shows, I think this is probably the guy who invented the code, or I don't know, maybe it's somebody who used the Morse code machine. Okay. It doesn't have a caption, so can't tell for sure. By Sunday night, April 14th, the Titanic was 2/3 of the way to New York. Titanic's 2 radio operators worked in their small office, sending and receiving messages by telegraph. Most were communications with nearby ships. The operators were very busy. The telegraph had stopped working for several hours the night before. Because of this, they now had a bottleneck of messages to send. Many were personal ones from passengers to family and friends at home. However, the operator's main job was to learn about any possible dangers ahead. After 4 days of steady travel, the Titanic had entered an ice field. On April 14th, the radio operators received 7 ice warnings from nearby ships. One ice warning came mid-afternoon from the Baltic and warned of large icebergs about 250 miles away. The operators passed the message to Captain Smith. He decided to alter the course of the ship slightly and travel 10 miles further south than usual. He believed that would be enough of a change to avoid any serious ice. Were the captain and officers alarmed? It didn't seem so. The ship was so well built, perhaps Captain Smith believed it was unsinkable. He never told his officers to slow down the speed of the ship. The Titanic was traveling full speed ahead. Here's a picture of the telegraph operators inside the ship. And this is a picture of the ship heading towards icebergs. Well, ice anyway. That night, the air temperature began to drop. Passengers felt the chill in the air. Wealthy ladies wrapped themselves in fur. Most people were content to stay indoors instead of walking the decks. There was no moon out and nothing to see but blackness. At 10:55 p.m., the radio operators received the last ice warning of the day. Later on, a nearby ship, the Californian, tried to alert the Titanic to danger ahead, but Titanic's operator was too busy sending messages from passengers. He dismissed the message and told Californian's radio operator to shut up. It said shut up, just so you know, that's what I read. So here's a picture of them outside, I guess, on the deck, even though there's nothing to see outside. Just walking. Icebergs. An iceberg is an enormous piece of ice that has broken off from a glacier or an ice sheet. Ocean currents and tides slowly carry an iceberg out to sea. The iceberg that hit the Titanic began forming on the west coast of Greenland about 15,000 years earlier. It was likely 400 feet long. Only about 10% of an iceberg's mass can be seen. The rest is underneath the water's surface. Here's a picture of an iceberg, and you can see the surface of the water. See how much more ice is actually under the water than what you see sticking out? That's where that saying comes from, just the tip. It's the tip of the iceberg, and it's kind of an idiom. And what it means is that you only know a little bit of what's happening because everything else is kind of underneath. So it'll say, oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It means you're just even seeing a little bit. There's much more that has to do with. 45 minutes after the Californian's warning, Titanic's two lookouts were keeping watch during the cold, clear night. It had been quiet since they took their post at 10 p.m. But the calm was about to end. At 11:40 p.m., the lookout spotted a large dark shape in the water. What could it be? An iceberg. Quickly, they rang the alarm bell and reported that the Titanic was heading straight for an iceberg. Chapter 7, Iceberg. With seconds to react, First Officer Murdoch ordered the engines to be stopped, then reversed. Then he ordered the ship to turn to avoid hitting the iceberg head-on. But making a gigantic ocean liner turn is very hard. It can't swerve to avoid an accident like a car can. The officers held their breath as the ship turned. It was too late. The side of the boat hit the berg, and the rivets which held the steel plates of the hull together popped out. Now it seemed there was a 300-foot-long opening along the ship's starboard side. Immediately, Captain Smith left his cabin and rushed to his officers. He had felt the collision. What did we strike, he asked. An iceberg, Murdoch replied. Captain Smith appeared calm. First, he asked if the watertight doors that sealed off the hull compartments from one another were closed. Here's Murdoch. And here's the ship hitting the iceberg. He ordered the engines stopped, hoping to slow down any water that might flow onto the ship. Then he asked another officer to check the bottom of the boat for damage. The first report was good. The officer didn't see any damage, but he hadn't gone far enough down into the ship. Then came the terrible news. The mailroom was already flooding. 7 tons of water rushed in every second. Postal workers were scrambling to bring hundreds of mailbags to higher decks. Captain Smith met with Thomas Andrews, the ship's architect. Andrews had just inspected the lower decks himself. In only 10 minutes, the water in the bow had risen 14 feet above the keel. The water couldn't be contained to just 4 compartments, and 4 was the maximum number that could be flooded with the Titanic still being able to stay afloat. Andrews gave the boat less than 2 hours before it sank. The Titanic was doomed. Here's people in the mailroom. And here's showing the flooding inside. "5 minutes after midnight, Captain Smith ordered his officers to uncover the lifeboats. Titanic was equipped with 20 lifeboats, but they could only hold 1,178 people. That meant over 1,000 people would be left stranded aboard the Titanic. Although some passengers had heard a loud noise when the ship hit the iceberg, many had slept through the collision. In first class, the crew kept calm as they knocked on cabin doors, urging passengers to put on life jackets and go to the top deck. Nothing was seriously wrong, they said. The captain was just being cautious. In the lower decks of third class, the crew didn't bother being polite. They ran down the halls, yelling at passengers to put on life jackets immediately. Many passengers, even those who couldn't understand English, didn't need to be told. They could already see water pouring into the ship." Okay, that's 2 chapters, so we'll read more tomorrow. Also tomorrow I'm going to show you the next Lego that we're going to be working on. My husband Rich and I are building Legos when we're not working from home. So I want to show you the one we're going to start working on next, just so you can maybe get excited about it with me. And that's it. I'm going to be sending out some important information for your parents. So please, if you see this, make sure to tell them, hey, there's going to be some important information from Mrs. Biggs, so to look for it. Okay. And Khaleesi's here sleeping as always. She is very lazy. We're going to have to take her for a walk because she honestly has been doing nothing but laying on my lap since pretty much we got home from school on Friday. So, okay. Hope you're doing well. And of course, I miss you. And happy Harry Potter Friday. Hopefully, some of you celebrated with me at home. Okay? Bye, you guys.